you so much for joining us today at RAT Podcast. Respect, humility, empathy. Those are the three values that we have as we attempt to talk about some a little bit of difficult topics sometimes. But today's actually going to be a really easy topic because we have a very special guest. Steve, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Steve Mazan, and I'm a stand-up comedian and writer from Los Angeles, California. That's where I am today, but I am originally from Chicago. Yeah, that's it. And I'm a stand-up comic.
Please tell me you're a Bulls fan.
Yes, of course. Well, of course. I think I got it on the.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I had
actually. I was just telling you about my sister. She sent us to Michael Jordan camp when we were in middle school. So I got to take some pictures with him and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Adam, where are you calling out of?
Plymouth in England.
Yeah. Hey,
Plymouth?
Adam.
Is that what it's called? Adam?
Plymouth, yeah, Plymouth down in Cornwall.
Oh, Plymouth. Okay.
Plymouth, yeah.
Plymouth, yeah. Like they're no O-N. I was like, Plymouth.
Adam, I've heard this is true. Can you verify this? I heard that British people actually talk with British accents, like in their mind, like their conscience is also British. Is that true?
I don't know. I don't think I'm convinced by that. I'm not sure. It's a difficult question, isn't it? I think it depends what you're thinking about, maybe.
Well, here's the real question. Do you speak with a British accent when no one's around? That's the real question I want to know.
Well, I definitely don't sound Chinese when no one's listening to me. I know that much.
So Steve, can you just give us a real quick recap of your history? Actually, reading your bio, I was like, wow, this guy's like way out of my league because we just started up, so still learning the process. But
out of your league, as long as the check cashes for this, no one's out of your league.
I was gonna say you're on a free fall right now. If you've done Letterman and now you're doing me, I'm like you're hitting some pretty rock bottoms, man.
That's right. Letterman, writing for Ellen, and now they're the podcast.
Actually, I know. Actually, I've been building up for that joke all day long, so I'm glad it fell with you.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Anyway, can you give us a little recap? Not too much. Don't go on too much.
You want like the abridged version of my life story, or like I forget. I was born in a log cabin in the Midwest. We read by the fireplace, and so I don't know how far to go back. I grew up in Chicago. I don't know if you saw us in the bio. I actually served in the United States Navy. I lived aboard a submarine for 4 years, and then I got out and moved to San Francisco and started stand-up comedy there, and was making a living as a comic. Moved down here to Los Angeles and was about 6 years into my comedy career, and started feeling a pain in my side that I thought was appendicitis, and it turns out I had stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
It was in my intestines and my liver, and so I had some emergency surgery to remove the source in my intestines, but the doctors gave me at that point a worst case scenario of 5 years to live, and obviously that's a pretty shocking thing to be told. I was in my early 30s at the time, and I'm not a worst case scenario guy. You of course take the attitude that I'm gonna prove them wrong. I'll be here beyond 5 years. But I had to ask myself, just in case I wasn't here in 5 years, what did I want to make sure I accomplished in that 5 years? And I had a girlfriend at the time. We had only known each other 8 months. I thought she would probably leave me at that point. I probably would have, left someone if they're going to be gone pretty soon. Especially, she was in her early 30s. For a woman, you're planning the rest of your life. Someone you're going to have kids with. Why would you? Someone you only knew 8 months at that point. Why would you stick with that person if they're not going to be along? But she stuck with me. We ended up getting married. And then the other thing, the reason I got into stand-up comedy is I was a big David Letterman fan. When I was a kid, my parents were Johnny Carson fans. And so I would stay up late and they would be watching Johnny Carson. I like Johnny Carson. But then all of a sudden there was this guy after Johnny Carson, David Letterman. And I thought he was funny. And of course, my parents didn't think it was funny. And that made me like him more. And he had a bunch of different comics and different guests and crazy, different kind of humor. He was from the Midwest, from Indiana. He had a gap in his tooth. He didn't look like people from Hollywood. And I just fell in love with him. And that's the reason I got into comedy, was to one day be on his show. And I was kind of waiting for that to happen. That's kind of, in life we do that. You work hard. That's kind of the way I was brought up. You work hard and things will come to you. And so that comedy had worked that way to me. I was working hard and trying to be funny, and I would get into clubs and stuff like that way. But it was coming to me. I wasn't really chasing it. And at that point, when I realized I might not be around in 5 years, I couldn't say someday I'll be on David Letterman anymore. So I kind of turned around and said, all right, I'm going to start trying to chase this goal. So I gave myself the goal of getting on it in a year. I didn't make it. And then I extended to 2 years and 3 years and 4 years. And eventually it took almost the whole worst case scenario of 5 years to finally reach it. And obviously we're way past the 5 years now too. So I had more time than I expected, but Letterman retired too soon after that. So
wow. But you actually sent chills up my spine and my whole body when you were talking about your wife, because I think any logical person would have left you.
Yes,
but
100%.
She clearly, I'm literally at a loss for words.
Can you imagine? Yeah, imagine it. I mean, we've all been in relationships that amount of time, right. Between that 6 and 8 months, we had said we loved each other for sure, but there's a different level of, I love this person and do I want to spend the rest of my life with them? Do I want to, and especially if they're not going to be here in 5 years, from her point.
Deal breaker, for sure.
Adam, you were in the military too, right?
Yeah, I'm an ex-submariner as well. Hey.
Yeah, are you serious?
Yeah. I managed 6.5 years. No, I am.
Pulling my leg now.
No, I'm not. I really am not.
I brought that up on a thing, and you are too as well?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, fantastic. A fellow
6.5 years in the submarine was enough for me.
Well, that's awesome. Nice to have. That's a small shared brotherhood there.
Indeed, it is. Yeah. Brotherhood. It's certainly that.
So we want to open up real quick, just doing a quick friendly fire. I'm actually going to ask both of you guys, but you could also ask a question if you like. But here we go. Who would be your dream set of opening up for who? Both of you guys.
For a comedy or
I'll go first, and I would say Chris Rock opening up for Mitch Hedberg, because Mitch Hedberg is my favorite of all time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. I'll say Brian Regan opening up for Richard Pryor. So and we can go, they don't have to be living, right? Can I go to?
Oh yeah, Mitch Hedberg's dead. So
yeah, that's true. Hedberg's dead as well. Yeah. So yeah, I'd go Brian Regan because I think they're very similar. Brian Regan, if you know him, and Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor is filthy, and Brian Regan is super clean. But they're actually very similar in the kind of characters and silliness that they talk about. Just one does it very with lots of cuss words and stuff. But so I would love to see them together.
And what about you, Adam?
For me, it'd have to be Ricky Gervais opening for Lee Evans. I don't know if you guys know. I assume you know who Ricky Gervais is.
Of course, Ricky. Yes, and I know Lee. From those videos. I've never seen him live, but I would. Yeah.
I saw Lee Evans live. He did venture as far down south as Cornwall. So before he retired, unfortunately, he's been retired for quite a while now. Right. I think I saw him live about 3 years before he retired. Nice. So I got in there right at the end.
Oh,
all right.
Awesome.
Here we go. What's your dream?
Adam, wait, can I say one thing? Adam, sure. Did you think, because I thought you were messing with me, when I mentioned that I was on a submarine, did you think I was messing with you?
I knew that you didn't know. So I knew that you,
Did you know that about me already?
No, I didn't actually. No,
that's what I mean. Like it's such a small brotherhood. I mean, there's the people who have lived on a submarine. It's so crazy. That's why I thought this guy's got to be messing with me.
And I would say the COVID lockdown is probably the closest I've ever been having that experience.
That's right. That's the number one thing people always say. I could never do it. The whole world has just proved they could do it, right?
I know. We were definitely prepared for this one, weren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. What is your dream date night or average date night with your wife? And I'll go first. Usually out to eat for Korean barbecue, and then we do some karaoke.
Oh wow! You guys are more adventurous than I am. Adam, what do you got?
Well, because we have a 2-year-old, we've not ventured out much, as you can imagine. Our date night, which we don't have very often, involves lots of pizza and wine. We both share that that love for Italian food and wine. So we're happy with the pizza and wine for sure.
That's got to be good, especially now. Yeah, with a kid, like if you get them sleep and pizza and wine. Mine's the old classic. I have a podcast on movies. I love movies. My wife luckily does as well. I know everyone loves movies, but like we're like deeper into it. Love talking about like all the different genres and directors and all that kind of stuff. So she's into that too. So yeah, the typical movie in a restaurant before or after, to talk about the movie we're about to see or after it. That's our classic date night. I'm
a huge movie buff, so I love movies, and I love comedy, and I love dark comedy. So there's a movie called In Bruges. Have you ever seen it?
Love it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Colin Farrell. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's one of my top 10s. But I saw that movie, and I saw it in South Korea, and it's dark comedy. So as it is, a lot of South Korean people, because of cultural, they just don't understand the jokes. And when I was watching it, I was laughing like a madman in there, and everyone is like, no one is laughing. They're like, what the heck's wrong with this guy? So,
I saw Jurassic Park in South Korea, not the or what's the new one with Chris Pratt? The first
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World, right? I saw that one in South Korea, and it was with me and another American guy, and yeah, we enjoyed it, but there was no emotion from the audience. Like, wow, it's like a roller coaster ride. You're like, they weren't effusive at all.
What were you doing in Korea?
Actually, a comedy tour for the military.
Oh, so, thank you so much for that.
Listen, Adam knows, like, once you've been in, like, anything you could do to give back, because especially on a submarine, we never got entertainment there. Like, So,
yeah. All right. So last question is, what is your favorite food?
Pizza for me.
Pizza.
This is going to be a good question for Adam, since the Brits are not known
fish and chips. Fish and chips.
Do you know what? We do have fish and chips every week, but I'm a steak man. There's nothing that makes me smile more than a decent T-bone.
How do you cook it, Adam? Or how is it?
It's got to be just sort of medium rare. You don't want to destroy it, but I can't. I mean, I don't know about you guys. Have you ever had a cold steak before? When you've asked for it rare, you've got brave, and you've started eating and it's cold, and you think this is all wrong.
Yeah.
And so mine is Mexican.
Yeah, like you said, the extreme, when they go too far and it's all blackened and it's like, well, now you were missing the juice. It needs to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mine is Mexican because I'm Mexican, and you just simply cannot get Mexican, or at least decent Mexican food here in South Korea. All right, real quick, can we ask you if you have a particular worldview, Steve?
Anarchy? I don't know what do you mean? How so?
Okay, spiritual.
Oh, spiritual. I would. I'm not sure what the exact name of it is. Is agnostic go where you? I don't believe in any specific religion or God or the kind of thing, but I suspect there's maybe something. There's a lot I don't know. I know that. So I would not be surprised if there's some higher power, but I don't particularly believe or have faith that there is.
Whatever you call it, Adam's ironically an anti-theist with the name Adam. That's kind of a little ironic to me, but I am a Christian, but we talk about some spiritual matters, but the R in the title is respect, and we have humility and empathy, because I'll be the first to say I don't have all the answers, but we do like to. Can you just tell us real quick can you give us a 1-minute sales pitch for atheism, Adam? At most.
For atheism, I would say for me, I mean, I couldn't go as far as the Dawkins 7 personally, because I wouldn't be confident enough to say that I know for sure there is no God. But I'm pretty certain. I'm at number 6.
Yeah, but Dawkins, by the way, just so you know, Dawkins created a scale from like 1 to 7, 1 being a theist like me, and 7 being an absolute atheist. And even Dawkins says he's like a 6.8. So if you're agnostic, which it sounds like you are, Steve, that would put you into the 4 level.
Oh, I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
That's always finishing right in the middle. That's the story of everything.
And just one question. Yeah, the trailer to that thing, I thought it was so funny, to that movie, Dying for Letterman. It says, every class has that one person who makes everybody laugh. He goes, he picked on me.
Yeah, he was the guy I made fun of. I was that guy that he made fun of. Yeah.
No, but I mean, were you really the class clown? Like,
no, I was one of those guys. I thought, and I think most comedians think this, that they're funnier than the class clown. The class clown's usually an idiot, right? Like, just doing something. But my humor is more intellectual than the class clown. The class clown was like the guy that making the fart noises in the ring, or you know what I mean, like stupid stuff. And I was like, well, I'm funny at that. So I mean, I got lots of laughs with my friends, and I was known as a funny person, but I was much shyer than the class clown. That's what I mean. The class clown. Usually, when people like, meet a comedian, they're expecting off stage he's going to be like, woo! Like, I don't know, Jim Carrey, crazy all the time kind of thing. But most comedians are a little bit wallflowers. That's why they're observing stuff. They can make fun of it later, kind of thing.
So I have a question for you. Are you familiar that British humor is quite a bit different than American humor?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's I don't know what the word, evolutionary almost. Does that make sense in some ways? I mean, America comes from England. You know what I mean? It's from there. There's a trace of us back to that. And right. But yeah, there's no doubt if you watch Monty Python and Blackadder, all that stuff, that humor is different than what you'd get on even the Ricky Gervais Office versus the American Office.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's a much darker. I'm going to even use I'm going to go British on this, cheekier.
Subtlety. I think a little more subtle as well.
Yeah. Could you?
That actually, Adam brings up a great point. British are in my analogy I used before about the class clown. The British are comedians, and the Americans are basically class clowns. They're more respectable. They're much more acerbic and thoughtful, and yeah.
So who's the most offensive, though? Would you say
between the two?
Because obviously we're renowned for having some pretty offensive comedians in this country.
I think. So
how does that balance out, do you think?
I think by and large, it's got to be that British are more so than Americans. I mean, there's definitely American comedians that are offensive, but and especially when I run into friends that have toured overseas or friends that are British comedians, they'll tell you like, yeah, the famous guys and stuff like that. But if you just go to a club, like it's harsh. It's a filth fest. It's like, it's dark stuff.
One of the biggest differences, I think, is the frequency that Brits use comedy. Brits use profanity, because in the UK, the F word is like a comma. It's like a placeholder for the next sentence, right? You guys use or blood, or it's the C word too. Yeah. I was so surprised because I think I'd only heard the C word used twice. I remember it was on. I remember so vividly. It was on Silence of the Lambs. And I remember one time my friend just used it, like just to use it in middle school. And I was like, wow, like I couldn't believe that. But you guys use it all the time, right?
Oh, yeah. Not around our mothers, though. There's a big rule here. We don't use that word around our mothers for sure.
But the mothers use it amongst themselves, probably.
Really?
Right?
Oh, that's when the things are going wrong.
Oh my God!
Where it's used by your own mother.
So Steve, we got some questions for you, and just try to answer these as honestly as you can. Right. But has comedy ever helped you on a personal level as an outlet or coping mechanism or anything like that?
100%. And I think obviously I'm a stand-up comedian, but I think every human being would have to say that. And to even go back to the British American tie-in and humor and stuff like that, the whole keep calm and carry on, motto is basically like, let it roll off your back, learn to, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of that attitude, right? Of like, things are going to hell, but stay calm or somehow don't panic the way you probably should be panic about this terrible thing that's happened. That's my life is like that. The cancer stuff, very, shocking when it happened, but then 2 weeks later, me and my wife and everyone were making jokes about it. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to die. And I was like, talking about marrying my wife. I was like, I could never see myself spending my whole life with just one woman. But if that's only a couple of years, like that kind of thing. God. So like, and we were all laughing about that. Even as a kid, my dad was a drinker. He was an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic, but he would come home drunk. He didn't beat us or anything like that, but he would come home drunk and do some very upsetting things. And then he'd pass out, and my brothers and sisters would act like him and make fun of him. You know what I mean? And that was our coping mechanism. Instead of crying about the situation, we would laugh about it. And I think it takes the power away from things. And I think a very human quality, whether, across the world.
So on a personal level, I was a former alcoholic, and I was a former, unfortunately, womanizer in my life. It's what led to my divorce prior to meeting Jesus Christ. And in some of the worst moments of my life, I realized, I didn't know it at the time, but it really stemmed from this depression and the self-hatred that I had of myself. And unfortunately, my wife got the brunt of that a lot of times. And we're actually reunited after 5 years divorce. And the night I got back to South Korea, she got pregnant. And then our daughter was born right in the Olympics. So that was kind of a special thing. But anyway, at some of my worst moments of depression, I would literally just go to YouTube and find comedians and just listen to them. And it would like boost my spirit up. And then when we got divorced, I went and did stand-up. And that was like the perfect outlet for me, because I just got to get everything out there. And when you're doing just like, I don't know if you've ever done just like the open mic. And the first thing what we'd do is we'd always just go up there and we'd take cheap shots at everybody else who came up before us.
Right.
And then, you take cheap shots at ourselves. And we left there feeling a lot better. So it really helped me.
Have you ever gone to do a show, you've got a plan, and you've gone up there, you've started your show, and for some reason you've had to change course? The jokes aren't working, or they take offense to them, and you have to think on your feet on stage.
100%. That happens basically every night. Like there's some shifting gears as you go along. There's some jokes you always tell at the beginning of your set just to feel out the audience. So you're like, oh, okay, this is the kind of audience, they like dark humor, so I could do these jokes later. Or oh, they pulled back there on that, so change what you were going to do later. The biggest one I can think of is I was doing working on a cruise ship, and 5 minutes in my set, I was killing. I'm not bragging. There's plenty of dying stories. I'll share with you guys if you want them. But this night I was killing, and then I said something about the service. And again, I was in the service. I served myself. And I made some joke, though, about the service and service events. And some lady off to the side, her husband was like a Vietnam War veteran. And he didn't care, but she took offense to whatever I said. And then she was yelling, and like and people, because it's this kind of, Twitter world or woke culture, whatever you want to call it right now, everyone kind of was like, yeah, wait a second, did he kind of disparage it? It's like, how silly it was. Like, I hadn't even allowed to them that I was in the service myself. So they're all like, oh, he's cutting down a Vietnam veteran, because this lady, and it changed the whole thing. So I had to spend about, my show was 40 minutes. I had to spend, that was 5 minutes into the show. I had to spend probably 15 minutes like reassuring them and the audience that they were all safe, and we're like, this was all fun and games, and no one was trying to cut anything down. And then, so that changes, you're always juggling. It's precarious. It's live. So. Right.
That's amazing. That seems like an ideal gig there, on a cruise ship. When we got married, we took the cruise from, I think Long Beach down to Catalina and then to Ensenada. So we flew in, went to Disneyland, did that, and did Vegas later on. So that seems like that would be an ideal.
It's not. It's a little more restrictive than a comedy club. In that way. But I mean, as far as you're getting paid to be on a cruise when everyone else
exactly.
That's nice, and you get the nice room and food and all that kind of stuff. But you have to, again, if that was at a comedy club, what I just told you happened. I probably would have been like, whatever, lady. Like, if you're going to take offense, like, you came to the wrong place. I wouldn't have cared. But on this cruise ship, all of a sudden I had to be like, oh my God, they're going to fly me home if I don't make this better.
I see.
You know what I mean? So it's a different thing.
So speaking of which, are there any topics that are off limits for you that you won't touch? Or do you feel just on a personal level, or just because you don't want to offend other people?
No. I mean, there's definitely stuff I wouldn't say, but just because my inspiration hasn't taken me there. But I will laugh at anything, and if I do come up with something funny that's on something that someone would find offensive, it's my job as a comedian to make that offensive thing, show them the humor in it. You know, Richard, like I said, Richard Pryor is one of my favorites. That was the one I named when I said, you know, who would open for who, and again, he was shocking in his time. Now we can look back and be like, it's, you know, you probably see most comedians talk about the stuff he did, but then in the 60s and 70s that he was talking about these things. So I don't think anything should be off limits. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean it's always funny or that no one's going to be offended by it, that kind of thing. But I think, to the same way we were talking about, it takes the power away from these things when we learn to laugh at them. You know,
I agree.
So, you know,
actually, racial humor is actually my favorite humor of anything, and I have the same exact opinion of that. Yeah. And when I was going up there, actually, I would tell a lot of racist jokes, and some people thought I was genuinely racist, but I'm like, I'm actually more likely making fun of people who have racist views.
Well, that's I always say there's two things. This line, at least in America, and hopefully the UK, like how we were saying, because they're so accepted on the body kind of humor, it's built in more. But in America, especially now, that we don't see a line between racial humor and racist humor. Like, that's the same thing right now, which is sad, because it's not like there's racial jokes that are literally making fun of racist people, but people would be like, no, you said that, so you're racist. You know what I mean? It's like, no, that's a separate thing. That's the joke, is that we're laughing at racists, you know? So
any kind of racist kind of nature is, a lot of people jump on it these days.
If you bring up race, that's somehow racist. It's like, well,
exactly. Yeah.
So one more quick question is, this may be a self-answering, but do you ever think that comedians get carried away or go too far with some things? Probably no.
100%, but it doesn't bother me. I understand that some people get upset by it, but I always say I would never take politicians seriously. Take people who make, big decisions in life. Don't ever take a comedian seriously. Well, like, you know what I mean? You can't go to, if I want to be a basketball player, I can go to the park or get a net behind my house and learn to practice it. The only way to practice comedy is by doing it. Mm-hmm. So you unfortunately get to see people go up sometimes and take big swings and misses, mm-hmm. and it comes across as offensive or racist or that kind of, but again, it's comedy. So who gives a crap what a comedian thinks in the first place? I know that obviously there's some amazing comedians that make people think, and they literally can change the world with how they, Chris Rock, we mentioned earlier. Yeah. They can change how people think about stuff, and that's amazing. But I'm just saying, in general, I think it's a good rule to be like, never don't get offended by a comedian. Like, you're missing the point of the show in the first place then.
Adam, you got another question?
I do, yeah. If you were given the opportunity to go back to when you were 18, mm-hmm. and you had the opportunity to give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be? Because the reason I am asking you this is because I often, at each stage of my life, I often think that to myself, and what I would, it does tend to change 100%. Through the stages of your life. Yeah. It's
a great question, and that's the reason. And I love that you think like that, because I do too. I often be like, oh, at that, and sometimes I'll have something, and I'll think to myself, oh wow, I wish I was further along. And I was like, wait, your 14-year-old self would be ecstatic with where you're at right now. Like, don't forget that stuff, like how far you've come and stuff like that. So the only thing, this is just going to make me sound so shallow, and immature and stuff. But I'm a guy, I'm a man. It all comes down to women and love and sex with me. And so I think I would go back and tell, even, instead of career and making money, instead of something smart, like invest in Apple and do that, I would be like, hey, just try a little harder with the women.
That's smart.
try harder with the women. You're going to get more than you think you are. Like you're not as ugly, deplorable, or uncharming as you think you are. You could do better. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, I wanna tell you a little something. Okay, so on your Letterman show, your Letterman thing, you talked about God, it was so funny. You talked about, you're like, I went to a hotel and they gave me a key.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, they gave me a key. And they said I had they luckily put my number on it, where all my valuables are.
Oh, but valuables are. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I came down here where I live right now. It's called Mokpo. I was living in Seoul, so now I'm living at the very bottom as a missionary. But when I came down with my wife, I had that same exact scenario happen where, just older hotels, and they gave me the key.
Yeah. With
the block thing. And so we rented a motorbike, and we're driving all around, and it fell out of my pocket. And so, and as an American, that was the first thing that goes into my mind, like, oh God, someone's gonna steal it and go there. But then I was like, oh wait, this is South Korea. Like, no one's gonna do something like that. You could drop. I remember when I first got here, I had a bag with a digital camera, like a bunch of DVDs, and I happened to have my credit card in there. And I lost it. And so I canceled my credit card, and I was like, that thing's good as gone, man. And about a month later, they had called up my bank, and they called me from the police station, like, we have your bag, like, come get it. So that's a great thing about living in Asia.
Wow.
So I do have another question. Does comedy have a role in social commentary and promoting change? I think you've already hit on that, but can you?
Yeah. I mean, it does. And again, I obviously was downplaying some of it because I'm not Chris Rock. I'm not, and most of the people are Richard Pryor, these people that do change. Bill Hicks, Billy Connolly, I thought was great at that. I'm trying to think of now some British guys that they change just the way things that until someone says them out loud and makes you laugh at how stupid something is. And in the moment, it's just that. But in the bigger picture, all of a sudden, the next day, everyone's work, like, hey, have you heard that joke? And the blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, people start thinking, yeah, like, why? Why is it that, why wouldn't gay people get married? Why wouldn't we legalize pot? Or, these little increments like that. Like, you hear a comedian and point out all the ridiculousness of it. And you're like, yeah, who, I can't think of the Australian guy right now. He has a really funny gun control bit. And it's like that. And I think it's moving the needle a little bit in America on how, some of the gun control stuff, how ridiculous it is. But he's Australian. So it definitely has a point in it. So, yeah, but I don't think it needs to, it doesn't need to be there, and it doesn't need to be thought of as so important, but it definitely is powerful.
I hear some dogs barking in the background.
Yes, that's what I have instead of kids. Not to compare it, that I'm not one of those idiots that think it's the same thing. I know, they're like, do you have kids? I've got 2 fur babies.
What kind of animals you got?
Yeah. 2 Australian Shepherds.
Australian, Aussies.
Aussie, yeah. 2
do they have an Aussie bark?
Yes, they sound like Adam when they bark, but off a little. You're like, I kind of think it could be British, but it's probably not. That's it.
Hey, Adam. Who do you think has a cooler accent, Aussies or Brits?
It's got to be Aussies, mate. It has to be, because for some reason, when I've had far too many Australian lagers, I do tend to
beer. That's a beer.
Depending on what I'm drinking, it might kind of go towards. No, I've got an auntie that lives in New Queensland, actually, and a friend. I got a chef friend that is traveling Australia right now, and he's enjoying it. But what with all the floods and the fires, snakes and spiders, it's been a tough ride for him.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know that you can answer this, Adam, but I actually have a buddy, a comic buddy. He's Australian, but he's also Canadian. He from Canada, but he doesn't hear it as much as I do, but he's got an Australian accent. But we had this talk, and I don't know why it is. So the same way we were talking, there's England, and then obviously America comes from England, Canada as well, and we have all these other influences. But then Australia's on the other side of the world, right? And has the British influence, but they sound more British than the Americans and Canadians. We have none of that charm in our voice. How did we lose it? How did we lose it and have none of it, but they've got it on the other side of the world?
That's a difficult one. They're a bunch of criminals, weren't they? The Australians, I think, to begin with.
I think they're just lazy.
They're lazy.
So very eloquent speaking criminals, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. They had better things. They had to straighten their lights out instead of worry about their accents, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah,
we should do
that's
more. We should find some desert, and we should probably do that. It's worked out well for them.
Yes.
So Steve, I got another question for you. What's it been like over the last year with COVID being comedy? Have you been able to do any like virtual stuff or?
Yes, yeah. Luckily, that's the one thing, and it's I can't wait for it to be gone and do no more virtual shows. But it has kept the muscle from atrophying. You know, to be able to do Zoom shows and stuff like that, a bunch of virtual shows. And so, yeah, it's kept me afloat. It's been great. But just actually the other night, that comedian I was telling you about who was Australian, him and I did a Zoom show and we loved it. It was one of the best fun Zoom shows. It was great. And then Los Angeles is just opening back up now.
Right.
And so I went right from that. We had just done the Zoom show and both him and I were like, that was one of the most fun Zoom shows we've done. It was so fun. We were both riding high. And then I went to the Improv, which is the big comedy club here in Los Angeles. And they opened their patio and they were doing like an open mic, basically, outside. So it wasn't a real show, but it was just, performing for other comedians. And I died. I bombed so bad. It was awful. So that night, the Zoom show was better than a real show. But I'll take bombing live over Zoom anyways. There's just so much intonation and facial feature stuff that, the camaraderie, like, again, half of what's being in the same room, like a submarine, like we were talking about, it is similar to that. That's, you're all in it together. You're all in the same boat. Whereas Zoom, it spaces you out and some people unmute or they don't even put their camera on. So it's hard to get that rolling laugh going in a Zoom show.
So
I bet.
So here's another question I have. So you had done the movie. Do you see yourself as doing something else, such as like writing? I think you said you're writing for the Ellen show or doing some kind of movies. I remember what was his name? Mitch Hedberg. As I said, he's my favorite. But he said this comedy show. They said we really like you. We really like you. But now, can you write or can you act? And he goes, that's like going to a farmer and say, hey, you're a really good farmer, but can you cook?
Right.
So, do you see yourself branching out or maybe writing a book or doing?
Yeah, I mean, I like writing. I've been lucky to do that. Yeah, for a couple of TV shows here in Los Angeles. It's one of those periphery things because I can write jokes for yourself. You can do it for other people. I like doing that. I've been lucky to get some commercial stuff because of, being funny or acting gigs like that where, it's like, oh, you're funny on stage. Can you do it like that? I like doing that, but I love doing stand-up comedy. If I could just do this and none of that, I would be happy. But sometimes, yeah, writing or acting pays better, between the gigs. So when those things come up, I take them, but, go back to what Adam was saying. 18-year-old Steve wouldn't care about writing or acting. He would be like, I just want to be up on stage making people laugh. So I still feel that way.
Adam?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, just we touched on the Ellen show. It's been in the media recently, actually, hasn't it? With bullying and I mean, obviously, as a writer, I don't know how sort of involved in the show you were, or whether or not you knew anything about it, or heard rumors, or.
Yes, no, I witnessed, and I don't think I've said this, and I got interviewed by a couple people since. I don't write for the show right now. This was 9 years ago when I was there, and I didn't see from her ever any bullying, but I saw a lot of bullying at the show from the executive producers, from the head writer, to me and to other people. Again, and
is that sort of commonplace in that industry, would you say, or not?
I think so. Again, because how I was just talking, because I've put myself so much in the stand-up world, I always felt like an outsider. In fact, on the writing staff, even though Ellen DeGeneres is a stand-up comedian herself, out of 9 people on the writing staff, there were only 2 people who did stand-up comedy, and I was the only one who did it full time. The other person was kind of like an open micer, but I worked with her a couple times and shows and stuff. So almost everyone else was a writer. So I felt like the outsider. So the couple times I've put myself in that world, I have found that, but I don't know that it is across the board like it, or it was just my experience. Like I said, sure. Someone who's made 20 years of living could probably speak together. Like, no, it's just, like a workplace thing. Like you find some that are great and you find some that aren't, and it depends how the people you're working with. But yeah, I definitely saw everything that came up in the media, not about Ellen, but about the atmosphere there, which at some level, her name's on the show. She's the big person, whether she was doing it or not, maybe she needs some responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So
I think if you're at the top, you have the ability to set that kind of, set the atmosphere. So whether or not she did it directly or not, I think it's going to reflect back on her, which is really sad.
Let me just say this, just because I know in case anyone has it. In her defense on that, Ellen is like Oprah. You know what I mean? Like, she is so out of touch with, I mean? I know it's like, oh, if you're running a company, how do you not know what's going on at your company? Mm-hmm. Well, you know what I mean? The CEO doesn't know what's happening in the break room. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So and again, I don't want to give her an out. You if you're the CEO, you have the responsibility to figure out what's going on.
Right.
You better,
and you learn that in the military, I think, as well. The buck stops, and you learn that pretty quickly, don't you, in the military?
Right. It rolls, the responsibility and accountability roll up and downhill. So you better know that. So, but in her, like I'm saying, in her defense, she was a stand-up comic. I'm sure she didn't foresee herself, her 18-year-old Ellen DeGeneres telling jokes in Louisiana, didn't think one day I'm going to be the biggest star in, Hollywood with a daytime show. And there's going to be hundreds of people, some I don't even know, who work under me, who are having problems. And I'm going to have to worry about if I'm responsible for that. So again, I don't want to let her off the hook, but that's how that can happen, that she doesn't know what's happening right under her nose.
So
I think that's a really, really fair analysis, actually. Yeah, that's great. So
Steve, I was watching a bit of your documentary. I have to watch the rest of it, but there were a couple of bigger names in it. Can you tell us about who was there and who you either met or know on a personal level? I'm just kind of curious on that. Actually, the last episode, I was talking about that my girlfriend was flying into Santa Barbara, and I made her like a big welcome sign. And just serendipitously enough, Sigourney Weaver walked off of the plane with her. And so I had like this big sign. I was like, hey, this is my girlfriend's first time in California. And so she signed it for her. I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. That's nice to hear, especially, when there's an icon like that. It's always great when they live up to what you hope they're going to be. Because, it's like Sigourney took the sign and ripped it. And was like, get out of my I'm Ripley, don't you know?
That actually would have been pretty cool. That actually would have been.
I was just going to say, that's still to come away with, as long as you have a story, right? That's This sign was ripped by Sigourney. In the movie. So as part of my journey to get on Letterman, and there was a couple filmmakers I knew that heard about this idea that I was going to use whatever time I had left from the cancer diagnosis to get on Letterman. They loved the idea, and they're like, hey, we would love to follow you and see where this goes. And we knew there were 2 options: either I die before it happens, or I make it happen. you know, whatever. So along the way, one of the ideas I had was, hey, how about we, you know, to make it more interesting than just me, how about I talk to other comedians who have been on Letterman and about, hey, how their process, how long into their comedy career they had, what did they do? Did they have to change their thing? How did all this kind of stuff? So that's how I ended up interviewing in the movie Jim Gaffigan, Ray Romano, Art Barker. I'm missing Kevin Nealon. I'm missing a few, but like these much bigger comics than me. And they were all very nice to give their time. Brian Regan, who is my favorite comic, who I mentioned with, you know, would be my dream show. So to get to talk to them and get their advice on comedy, and then just this dream I had was amazing.
You must cast your mind back and wonder, you know, what you'd be doing now, maybe, had you not been through that stage of your life.
Yes, 100%. And it goes back even to how you were talking about. I love the 18-year-old thing, because it does just give you the perspective on all that stuff of how you would look. And again, this lit a fire under me. It changed my whole perspective when you think I may only have 5 years to make everything I want to happen in life might have to be in these 5 years. So I changed my life. And again, you see this in the documentary, the things I changed, you know, the putting things on a fast track rather than waiting for them to come to you, all that kind of stuff. Now, that being said, as those things get accomplished and as I go past the 5 years of that diagnosis, even though that lit a fire under me, it's very easy to fall back in the routine of life. And I catch myself all the time not learning the lesson the real lesson that I learned from this whole thing is that you don't know. I have friends who during that time in those 5 years died from a car accident or an overdose. I'm here and they're not.
Wow.
You know? And we should all learn from these things, like the perspective of like, hey, it's going to go away. You don't know what it's going to be. You think might be this way. You get told you have cancer. Maybe it could be a car accident. You know, it's actually probably more dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So I catch myself falling back into these routines all the time where I'm like, all right, well, that'll come to you. Just keep going. And I'm like, no, wait, you don't know that it's going to come to you. You learned this lesson, you know, a decade ago. Don't wait for it. So it's a constant thing. Am I answering the question that you asked? I sometimes I feel like I start
that's great.
Explaining.
No, sure.
Well, actually, I had a follow-up question because this is not primarily focused on religion, but it does come up with spirituality. So whenever you get a diagnosis like that, does it make you stop and think about what might happen if there is an afterlife? Because I'm gonna tell you, two things happened to me. One is whenever I was getting ready to go into college, I was taking my nephews out to camp. Do you know Lake Isabella by the chance?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're going from Bakersfield through Lake Isabella, I think it's off the 58. There's this really whiny, and in fact, I did one time see. They were airlifting people who had fallen off there. I mean, it was scary.
Right.
But it was raining, and I skid out, and actually we went flying back about 30 feet going backwards. So after we spun out, it was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Actually, my car wound up going onto the mountain, and so they had to like come tow it out of there. But I remember thinking like, oh my God, my life is gonna. Actually, you know the movie Fight Club, whenever Brad Pitt points a gun to the guy's head and he's like, you better enroll. And then
remember this. Yeah.
And the guy's like, what the hell are you doing to that guy? And Brad Pitt has this moment of introspection, and he says, tomorrow that guy's breakfast is going to taste better than any breakfast you or I have ever eaten. And I remember that having that time of reflection and like, man, what if I would have died right there? You know, like what would my life have been? And this last year, I went through a period of about 2 months where I was positively certain I was going to die because I got so sick. I had to crawl around on the floor like a worm. I had to I couldn't even lift up my daughter. Like, it took all my strength to lift up my daughter, and she's like 10 pounds at the time, to lift her up like this. And it really stopped me to think on my tracks about the direction of my life and whether I was accomplishing what I wanted to do. So kind of like, what kind of advice would you have? I think your TED Talk was so brilliant whenever you opened up with all the cliches, and then, you know, you basically said, hey, we all have a death sentence. So I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of advice. Or
yeah, we all have these things that come into our life. I had a joke about this. I'm going to go on a weird tangent. I had a joke when I started about, you know how you're driving sometimes and you're tired? You ever done this like late at night and you're tired and your eyes are going, you know, and then you all of a sudden hit the things on the side of the road, the you're like, oh my God, you're wide awake and you're like, holy crap, I almost died. Like, you're so scared. And then like 5 minutes later, you're doing the same exact thing.
Yeah. I think everybody's been there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's
oh
life.
my God.
Yeah. And then you stop the car and you think, wow, I learned a lesson there. Or maybe slightly more of a lesson than I did last time I did it.
you hope so. And that's what I think life is we learn these lessons, but you don't learn them and it's done. You relearn it again. Mm-hmm. You learn the same lesson over and over and over and over again. And again, that's what I'm saying. Like, my own perspective changes like that. It changed when I got that diagnosis, and it probably changed more than it, because it's a gigantic thing like that versus the just on the side of the road kind of thing. So there's sides of, but yeah, I do think whatever you can use to motivate yourself or relearn that lesson, whether it's something in your own life or someone near you goes through something and you're like, holy shit, that could have been me. Holy cow, sorry. That could have been me. You know, you drive by a car accident. We've all had that too, where it scares you just seeing a bad car accident. And you're like, wow, I probably missed this by 30 seconds. You know, that this happened in front of me. Or, you know, you're talking about the Fight Club thing. I think whatever any of us can do to get motivated, whatever we find that on, is good. You know, whether even if it is a cliche, you know, speech or you know, a Nike ad of just do it. Listen, if it motivates you for a while, whatever it takes, it's you know, reigniting it, I guess.
So when I had that sickness, I had to go to the hospital, and I was in there for a week. And during that week,
what did it end up being, Isaiah? I didn't hear what's the diagnosis.
That's the craziest thing in the world, Steve. The doctors did. Well, I'll tell you the whole story real quick. But so I was in the hospital for a week, and they were doing all of these diagnosis checks. Literally, the morning I went into the hospital, I had to crawl on the pavement, and a taxi driver just happened to be there, off the clock, and he gave me a ride for free. But I couldn't see my daughter while I was in there, and that was the hardest thing because I didn't know what I had, and I didn't want to risk my daughter, catching whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember the times that I was at home, I couldn't lift her up. And I thought, how many times was I able to pick my daughter up and I didn't, you know? Right. And now I was in a moment where I couldn't. So after about a month of testing, they finally said to me, they said, and I was in crutches because I could not walk. And they said, we don't know what's wrong with you because we've done every test. We've gone through it. We've limited everything. And we have no idea what's wrong with you. Oh, yeah. Actually, Steve, what might have happened, I told this to my sister, she's really into fitness, but do you remember I told you I gave away a trip to America, to South Korea, to some guy from Los Angeles? Well, it turns out the guy was like an absolute alcoholic, and he wound up causing all kinds of damage here to my business and to my family for like 5 months. He was raising hell. And then after he left, I got sick, and I'm not sure if that stress played any role in it. It might have been completely mental, because after the doctor told me that, I limped out of there and I was just crying like a baby in the hospital. And as I left, I saw, because I felt so alone. I felt so alone. Can't speak the language here. Like I was just felt like a total alien. And I saw some kids, some cancer kids with tubes in their throats. I mean, and their parents were there and they were totally bald. And I remember just sitting there and I just prayed out to God and I said, God, I hate what's happening to me. In a 24-hour period, I would experience more pain than I experienced my entire life, like combined into one. And so I prayed to God in that moment, and I prayed for those people, and I said, "Thank you that it's me and it's not my daughter. I'm just going to be grateful for that, and I'm gonna, because I would take anything over seeing something, just even one thing happen to my daughter." Yeah. So anyway, Steve, that happened, and within 24 hours, I was able to walk again after that encounter. It was incredible. Wow. Yeah.
That's just, yeah.
You go into an island, you've got all the food and drink you need. You're allowed 2 items. What are you taking?
But
a mic.
As we talked about earlier,
a mic.
Hopefully a partner, a woman, right? That so I can have some company, right? I get to bring my wife or
That's
someone.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. I'm going to need some company. And then, yeah, what would I, besides a person, and we got the food and the water thing. I wouldn't call myself an avid reader. I love reading. I love books. I've got a long list of books and stuff, and I'm always got something on my bedside here, but I'm not one of those guys. Like my mom reads like 4 books a month. She's like deep in kind of thing. I think a book, there is something about like, even more so than like a song or a TV show or a movie, which I love movies. There's something about a book that you can, it can last forever, right? It's different every time you read it. Mm-hmm. It stretches out much more than a movie.
100%.
So, I think a book, and I don't know what book it would be. Because that's
okay. Fiction or non-fiction?
Probably fiction. Fiction, I think, especially if I got to be stuck on the island. Because right,
yeah,
it's like, well, why do I need to learn about anything in reality right now?
Right. So, Steve,
survival book might be helpful.
That's true. Yes. That's how to start a fire. Now it's practical.
So, Steve, so I'm a Christian, but I usually do this podcast with atheist guys. And one of the things that a guy said, my first host, he said that it's impossible to be in the same river twice. And I say it's impossible to be anywhere twice, actually, because where you are in the universe is always different. You're constantly expanding and traveling.
It's just a metaphor for that, right? Yeah.
So you really can't. But I think it's very, very clear to understand with the book that you cannot read the same book twice, because first of all, you're not going to be the same person as when the first time you read it. And second of all, you get so caught up the first time reading it, you're trying to absorb like everything, you're trying to get it. Right. And whenever you go through the second time, you can go and catch out little details. So my favorite book of all time is 1984. And the second time that I read that book, it was so much better to me. And the third time as well, like it just got richer and richer and richer.
Right.
And so part of what the H in the RHE podcast is for humility, because the reality is that you see something and you think that you understand it right now, right? And one of my favorite movies of all time is A Big Fish by
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. Yeah. And so it says that like we wind up crossing our tracks later on, and we have a totally different perspective. And for the guy in the movie, he's visiting this old village now as a father, and the way that he's seeing situations. And so like before, when I wasn't a father, that would have made zero sense to me. I saw that, yeah. And what the words that he was saying didn't even register into my mind. But when I saw it as a father, and actually after traveling the world and experiencing the loss of my mother, which is one of the hardest things in my life to experience, to going through the sickness, to finding Jesus Christ now, everything has changed in such a different and drastic way. So for me to ever think that I have the 100% truth right now, and I need to beat you or Kim or Adam or gay or transsexual, anyone from any line of spectrum, is not where I'm at, because I know that I could get to a point where I don't have the same exact opinions that I have right now. So for me, I've changed all my opinions, and I'm continually growing in spirituality and learning about the Bible and Jesus and things like that. So it makes me have humility and empathy with people. And so, yeah, I do believe this. I do. But, you know, you talk to Adam. I don't try to beat people with my religion. Would you say, Adam?
No, not at all.
We've had some good talks, right?
Quite the opposite. Yeah, the opposite. So
speaking of which, man, we want to just end in a very high note. So if you wouldn't mind, Steve, you can just do a little 5 minutes, or however long you can go. We would really appreciate it because.
Oh, geez, I forgot. I completely forgot about the performing aspect of it.
Just 5 minutes. I mean, we'll be extremely, extremely grateful.
Yeah, let me think. You know, all right, I got a little bit. I'll tell you about Canada because that's where I was supposed to be this week if COVID hadn't been actually working in Canada. Have you guys have you been? Obviously, another at one point under the settings, the never setting sun of the British Empire. Still, I know they got Queen Elizabeth on their money and stuff, but they're incredibly friendly people. The Canadians. And this is something I learned about them last time I was there. I grew up in Chicago, which is not too far. Probably the closest part of Canada is maybe 3-4 hours away. You can get there. I had never visited until the past 10 years. Started doing comedy there. They're incredibly nice people. They do not have the death penalty. There's no death penalty in Canada. I don't know. In England, do they have it? In the UK? No, of course, because they're a civilized country. But no death penalty. Them being the America's hat, basically, Canada, they're much closer to us. So they know that death penalty, and they're known for being friendly. That's how friendly they are, that they don't even kill people who've killed other people. Right? They're just like, okay, don't do it again. Don't do it. All right, give a break. They're like, well, what if I do it again? We'll talk about it then. Don't worry about it. So in the United States, we can't decide about the death penalty. We do it. We can't decide as a country. We're doing it. Every state is different. Every state's different. There's some states that still use the electric chair in this day and age. In 2021, I mean, I think we can all agree, whatever side of the capital punishment argument you're on, the electric chair, that's barbaric. This is 2021. This is the 21st century. I think we can all agree that it's time for solar. Solar. We have a solar chair. We have the technology. Let's use it.
Oh my God.
Let's make the Green Mile greener. We could do this. We could do this. No more midnight executions. High noon, sun high in the sky. Most Jews possible. Let's get into there. Hey Bob, it's not happening.
Oh God.
Did I get pardoned?
Oh no, my God.
It's cloudy outside. It's not going to happen. All right. Well, here's one. This one's topical. I'll give you guys a topical one. Are you still wearing masks outside? Do you have to wear masks everywhere?
Oh yeah, it's Korea.
Okay. Have you done this? Have you left your house and forgotten your mask?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you're both smart people. You probably do the right thing and you go back, get your mask. I will not go back. I'm stubborn. I will not go backwards. I will make a mask out of things in my car. I will fashion a mask. I'm creative. I figure I can do it. I can make a mask out of things. I don't know if you have this show in the UK, but we had one here in America called MacGyver. I become MacGyver with masks. I'm like Mask-Gyver. And I will make a mask out of things. The very first one I did is I made a mask out of shoestrings and a Burger King napkin. I was able to make two because I had two shoes, so I was able to do that twice. And then I ran out of Burger King napkins. And yesterday, I had to do it again, and I was out of all that stuff. So I used a floor mat and jumper cables. And I was wide awake from the jumper cables. Yeah, that's why. That's why COVID did. Oh, and anyone is people watch this on Zoom? Do they watch, or is it for the podcast? It's visual as well, or they just hear it?
Yeah, it's visual. Yeah. Whoa, man. They're going to see my red face right here. I'm sweating like a dog in the Korean restaurant. I'm sweating like a dog in a Korean restaurant right now. So anyway, Steve, we really just want to thank you for your time. I really hope someone listens to this, and wherever stage they are, we're going to put links for everything. Your TED Talk was absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the kind words. And yeah, like, listen, it was a pleasure talking to you both. I love, look, I do a podcast myself. So it's, I love just talking to people. And that was the idea when I started my podcast. I was like, I end up talking movies anyways. I might as well hit the record button at some point. And so you're both good conversationalists. So it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
We'll put links for all of your stuff in there. And Adam, you got a last word?
Yeah, thanks. It's been great. Really,
Adam, thank you, fellow bubblehead. Thank you.
Exactly. I was going to say,
bubblehead.
That was quite a surprise for me. So,
so awesome.
Fantastic chat. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Yeah. So we look forward to seeing you back at the next episode of RHE Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.